ya no hay eragio vernal, ya no morirá de fruto. Ya con esta me despido, no me queda que cantar. Estas son las mañanitas de don Heraclio Bernal.
He's counting with his daughters and Angel and somebody else.
My problems, I don't remember the people.
Across our state, only a handful of communities exist, purely in the minds of those who once called them home.
My memory is richer as to where we lived. Climbing down the hill, because we walked all the time. We walked everywhere. That was really our life.
It was a city, a very modern city. All these other coal camps were just coal camps, but Dawson was a city.
In northern New Mexico, just outside Maxwell, down Highway 505, Dawson once stood as a model coal mining metropolis, bigger and better than any other company town on the map.
Well, there was a beauty shop in Vitale's and
Yes.
a haircut. Yeah, the Central School.
And then Phelps Dodge, the store.
Yeah, and then the gym.
Their mercantile filled 3 stories of imported goods. Both schools were accredited, and their 1,000-seat opera house was the biggest in the state.
They had a hospital, doctors that worked for the company that worked out of the hospital.
The doctor's visits and everything that we needed from mercure comb to castor oil. Did you get us a dosage of castor oil? We always did.
Just something special, yes.
But under the surface, 7 mines worked 24/7. Gases escaped the earth while heavy machinery hummed and groaned around the clock. It was choreographed chaos.
And Mr. Graham and they came and chaperoned the dance so we could have a dance.
The underground frenzy was overpowered by the vibrant life above ground. Families making a home for those who labored deep below.
I can smell the bread from the Fabros.
Exactly.
From the Fabros.
The meals cooking at evening, the aromas that were going through the valley. In retrospect, I don't know that I appreciated it then, but the fact that they were laboring and contributing to the growth of this nation.
1900s America was expanding fast. New buildings, infrastructure, and the First World War, all desperate for steel. Coal was the catalyst to explosive growth.
So when steel making was important or becoming important in, as you mentioned, the Industrial Revolution, we needed that coke to make steel out of pig iron.
Yeah, it was good coking coal, and it was the biggest of all the coal mines.
Phelps Dodge needed all the hands they could find. The company recruited migrant workers to northern New Mexico by the trainload.
Castrofrecas, Scandali, those were Greeks. There were Italians and, galore.
My great-grandfather came over from Ellis Island and started working there.
My dad came up in 1904 from Irapuato, Guanajuato.
It was the promise of a new home, first-class living and steady work that turned Dawson into an international crossroads. Families came to Dawson from as far away as Serbia and as close as from down the road.
In Dawson, we had a lot of New Mexicans that came, that were there. And that was a large group that had been here for generations.
But with the opportunity for a new life in this grand city came the risk of losing it all.
Dawson was certainly extremely important, and because of that importance, because of the mines, it often then is associated with some of the hazards associated with especially coal mining.
No one could have imagined Dawson would shoulder the sorrow of disaster, not once, but twice.
They knew about the coal dust, and they had ways of wetting the coal dust down. They had the machines to spread the rock dust out to keep the coal dust from building up to cause an explosion.
You think it's fun to get up at 5:30 in the morning to light a coal stove, to turn on the water, to
Exactly.
get hot, to pack a lunch? We had to do that for my father, my brothers.
When I realized that how many years my father, our fathers, entered that black hole. There was this hill that was right, it was a stack that they'd be coming around, and it was almost like another procession, of the men just walking home in procession around the path.
In the early 1900s, Dawson, New Mexico produced the most coal with the most miners in all the West. For nearly 50 years, the owners, Phelps Dodge, built their fortune. It was all thanks to the risks taken by New Mexicans, migrant workers, and some of the least likely Dawsonites to pick up a pick and shovel.
I would just hear about the younger generation going in, working, 10, 12-year-olds even.
Treacherous work where one wrong step could mean the difference between life and death.
When you're working in the coal mines, you had to keep your eyes open for the roof, some of the rock coming down, the walls. You have your tunnel that was just so wide, and the machines went through there.
No matter how long you lived in Dawson or how many years you worked in the mine, the threat of an accident was always lurking in the air.
Coal dust is sort of one of the other hazards in a coal mine because we drill coal, which we produce particles of dust, and it's explosive.
What was very terrifying is when those whistles would blow. They were eerie.
Yeah, we knew.
And we would all just wonder whose dad, whose uncle was hurt today.
In 1913, there was a spark, big old explosion. And in the explosion, there was 263 miners killed in one blast. One of the biggest mine disasters in the state of New Mexico.
The 1913 Dawson disaster still stands as the second deadliest mine accident in the country. Exactly 10 years later, in 1923, tragedy sent echoes of pain through the valley once more at Mine Number 1. The aftermath was caught on film. 123 miners killed by another explosion. Many of the dead were children, family of the miners killed in the first disaster a decade earlier.
Seeing the bodies, they'd be laid out in the area because they had to identify them. Yeah. But to see the number that had died.
Today, sun cuts through pillars of rock in the canyon. Light drifts down the mountainside like a torch, piercing a heavy shroud of darkness. All that's left of the once buzzing mine town is the Dawson Cemetery. Veins of white crosses stretch as far as the eye can see.
I think that people experience residual hauntings and then they experience intelligent hauntings where they are trying to reach out for help. They're trying to say, hey, can you help us move on?
Some paranormal investigators say this spot holds a supernatural connection to the past.
We just sort of found ourselves at the Dawson Cemetery and stuck around for a couple hours and just did some EVP work, which if you do not know, EVP stands for electronic voice phenomena.
What I was looking for was the sounds. You know, I've heard people standing inside the graveyard and actually hearing people scream.
There was like a dome, like an invisible dome over this cemetery, and there wasn't an echo.
Deafening silence from almost 400 victims. who all know this mine town isn't claiming any more lives.
But that's that. They would threaten us, if you don't come home, La Llorona is going to get you. La Llorona is going to be out there.
I was never left alone, so that I never got that scary part. Yeah, that's the advantage of being the baby.
After Phelps Dodge demolished Dawson in 1950, the cemetery became a touchstone. Every other year, Dawsonites bring their town back to life with a reunion. It's a special day, a moment no one has to rely on their memory of what used to be.
I mean, it was Dawson, but it wasn't home. And
I know. One of the things that, again, because of the reunions, people became aware of the cemetery. Many had been attending, really respecting the gift of our miners, that they must be remembered.
Remembering the life lessons, the lives cut short, and a love for the community that gave so many New Mexicans a happy life.
Ay, mi Dawson tan querido, ¿cuándo te volveré a ver? Fuiste mi cuna querida, que me dio la vida, que me dio el encanto, que me dio mi ser.
Each and every one of these white iron crosses represents the commitment and the dedication every miner and their family had here in Dawson. Dedication to the last breath. Now, these are nearly 400 reasons why the echoes in this canyon will never be silenced. With this eerie enchantment, I'm Hawker Vanguard.